Yo, welcome to my channel. If you're into fun, creative, and sometimes a little bit crazy content, then this is definitely your kind of place. I'm here to entertain, share good vibes, and bring you something different every time. Hit that subscribe button and come be part of the fun.
The day my wife's attorney called to inform me that the divorce settlement had been finalized, I was sitting in my truck outside of Walgreens in Marietta, Georgia, watching the rain streak down the windshield. I didn't feel anything. Not relief, not grief. Just a quiet, settled kind of stillness, the kind that comes after you've already done everything that needed to be done. Let me back up. My name is Marcus. I'm 41 years old. I spent 14 years building a mid-sized commercial construction firm from a single truck and a borrowed nail gun into a company with 32 employees and contracts across 3 counties. I did it the hard way. Early mornings, late nights, weekends on job sites while other men were watching football. My wife, Jennifer, was there for the early years. She understood sacrifice then. Or at least, I believe she did. We met in 2009 at a mutual friend's cookout in Smyrna. She was funny and sharp, and she laughed at things most people didn't think were funny. I liked that about her. We got married in 2011. For the first several years, things were good. Not perfect, but good in the ways that matter. We had a daughter, Lily, who is now 10. We bought a house in Kennesaw with a big backyard and a screened porch. We had a life. Sometime around year 9, something shifted. I noticed it the way you notice a slow leak. Not all at once, but in small accumulations. Jennifer started coming home later. She started taking phone calls in the garage. She started responding to my questions with half answers, her eyes somewhere else. I told myself it was stress. She had recently gone back to work as an office manager for a commercial real estate firm, and the hours were long. I told myself a lot of things. The man she was working with was named Derek Holt. He was her direct supervisor, 46 years old, recently divorced. Drove a silver BMW he couldn't stop mentioning. I had met him twice at company events, and both times he had shaken my hand a little too firmly and held eye contact a little too long. The way men do when they want you to know they aren't afraid of you. I filed that observation away and said nothing. I want to be precise about the moment I knew. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a lipstick on a collar or a phone left unlocked. It was a Thursday evening in late February. I had come home early from a job site because a delivery had been canceled. Jennifer's car was in the driveway, which surprised me. She had told me that morning she'd be working until 7. I came in through the side door and heard her voice from the kitchen, low and unhurried, the tone she used when she felt completely safe and unobserved. She was on the phone. I caught only one sentence before she heard my footsteps and went quiet. She said, "He doesn't know anything. He never has." She came around the corner a moment later with her phone already pocketed and a smile arranged on her face, and she asked how the site visit went. I told her fine. I went upstairs and changed my clothes. I stood at the bathroom sink and looked at my own reflection for a long time. She doesn't know what I know. She never will. That was the moment I decided not to confront her. Not yet. Not until I understood the full shape of what I was dealing with. Here's something Jennifer never fully appreciated about me. I am, at my core, a methodical man. Construction teaches you that. You cannot build anything that lasts by rushing the foundation. Every decision I had ever made in business, the good ones, the ones that mattered, came from patience and from understanding the whole picture before I moved a single piece. I decided to apply that same discipline to my own life. Over the next 3 weeks, I began paying attention in ways I never had before. I noticed patterns. Derek's name appeared in her phone notifications more often than any client's name had any reason to. She started going to the gym on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, a gym that, I confirmed, was 7 minutes from Derek's apartment in Vinings. She bought new perfume, a brand I didn't recognize, and kept it in her car rather than in our bathroom. I said nothing. I watched. In the 4th week, I made a decision that would change everything. I called my brother-in-law, Ray, Jennifer's older brother who had worked in financial compliance for 11 years and who, despite being her sibling, had always been more my friend than hers. I met him for lunch at a barbecue place in Woodstock, a spot far enough from both our offices that we weren't likely to run into anyone we knew. I told him what I had observed. I told him what I suspected. Ray was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "How's the business account looking?" That was not the question I expected. He leaned forward and lowered his voice. "Derek Holt isn't just a real estate manager, Marcus. His firm handles commercial property transactions. Big ones. I need you to go home tonight and pull up your last 6 months of business financials. Look specifically at any deals where Jennifer handled the vendor contracts." I drove home that evening with a low, cold weight in my chest that had nothing to do with the marriage anymore. What I found over the following 2 nights at my kitchen table while Jennifer slept upstairs was not easy to look at. 3 vendor contracts, all executed in the past 8 months, all routed through a property management LLC I did not recognize. The LLC was called Holt and Associates Property Group. The invoices were for project coordination fees, a line item vague enough to mean almost anything, specific enough to look legitimate at a glance. The amounts were not small. Over 8 months, just over $200,000 had left my business account through those invoices and landed somewhere I couldn't immediately trace. Jennifer had co-signature authority on the business account. I had added her 3 years earlier as a practical matter. There were times I was on job sites without cell service and needed someone who could authorize payments. I had trusted her completely. I had trusted her the way you trust the foundation of a building you helped pour yourself. I sat at that kitchen table until 4 in the morning. Then I closed the laptop, went upstairs, and lay down next to my wife in our bed. She was asleep on her side, breathing slowly. I looked at the ceiling. I did not confront her. The next morning, I called an attorney. Not a divorce attorney, not yet. I called a CPA named Gordon Reeves, who specialized in forensic accounting and who had done work for one of my subcontractors during a disputed contract 2 years prior. I told Gordon what I had found and asked him to begin a full audit of my business finances going back 18 months. I told him to be thorough and I told him to be quiet. Gordon called me back 9 days later. He did not deliver the news over the phone. He asked me to come to his office. The total, across all identified transactions, was $312,000. It had been moved in increments small enough to avoid automatic flags, routed through the LLC, and distributed from there in a way that would require a subpoena to fully untangle. Gordon explained it with the calm precision of a man who had seen this kind of thing before. He told me that what I had was enough to bring to an attorney and potentially to law enforcement, but that I should understand the process would take time and that Jennifer's involvement would need to be established clearly before any action was taken. I thanked him, folded the report into a manila envelope, and drove to the office of a family law attorney named Patricia Okafor on Powers Ferry Road. I had been referred to her by a colleague whose own divorce 3 years prior had been complicated in ways he'd never fully explained to me. Patricia had handled it. Patricia reviewed everything I brought her: the financial records, Gordon's audit, the LLC registration documents I had pulled from the Georgia Secretary of State's website, which listed Derek Holt as the registered agent. She read without expression. When she finished, she set the papers down and said, "How long have you been sitting on this?" I told her 3 weeks. She looked at me for a moment. "And your wife doesn't know you know?" "No." Patricia nodded slowly. "I want you to do something that's going to be difficult. I want you to keep it that way for another 60 days. She explained her reasoning. If Jennifer and Derek suspected that I had discovered the financial transfers, they might move to dissolve the LLC, transfer remaining funds, or complicate the paper trail in ways that would take months to unsnarl. If I filed immediately, I would be tipping my hand before the full audit was complete. But if I gave Gordon 60 more days to trace the distribution of those funds, to establish exactly where the money had gone and who had benefited, then, when we did file, we would do so with a complete picture. "You want me to keep living in that house for 2 more months, I said. "I want you to protect your daughter's financial future," she said. "Yes." I drove home. I made dinner. I sat across from Jennifer at the kitchen table and watched Lily talk about her day at school, and I said the right things at the right times. And I felt like a man standing inside a building he already knows is going to come down, waiting for the moment to step outside. Those 60 days were the longest of my life. I want to be honest about that. There is nothing righteous or comfortable about that kind of waiting. I was not enjoying myself. I was not conducting some clever revenge scheme with a soundtrack playing behind me. I was a man who had been betrayed by his wife and his business partner simultaneously, who was watching his daughter eat cereal in the morning and trying to figure out how to protect her from a collapse she couldn't see coming. Some nights I sat in the truck in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. But I kept going inside. Gordon finished a full audit in 53 days. The picture was worse than the initial estimate. Jennifer had accessed the business account on 14 separate occasions. The LLC had received deposits from my account and had distributed funds to 2 personal accounts, one registered to Derek Holt and one registered to a name I didn't recognize until Gordon explained that it was a joint account opened 8 months prior in Jennifer's maiden name at a credit union in Alpharetta. She had opened a personal account in her maiden name. She had been building an exit. When Patricia saw the full audit, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said She was planning to leave you and take a significant portion of your business assets before she went. Yes, I said. Were you surprised? I thought about it honestly. No, I said, not by then. Patricia filed the divorce petition the following Monday. She also filed, simultaneously, a civil complaint for financial fraud and breach of fiduciary duty, naming both Jennifer and Derek Holt. The civil complaint included a motion to freeze the LLC's remaining assets pending litigation. Gordon's audit was attached as an exhibit. Jennifer's attorney called Patricia's office that same afternoon. I was in a meeting with a client when my phone lit up with Patricia's name. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. She didn't know it was coming, Patricia said. Her attorney said she was, and I'm quoting here, extremely distressed. I said I understood. Marcus, Patricia said, the freeze on the LLC went through. They can't move anything. I went back into my meeting and finished discussing the timeline for a warehouse build in Austell. Then I drove to my parents' house in Douglasville, where Lily had been staying for the past week under the explanation that I needed some time to handle a work situation. My mother opened the door and didn't ask questions, which is one of the things I love most about her. Lily ran down the hall and grabbed me around the middle, and I held on to her for longer than usual. And my mother pretended not to notice. The divorce proceedings took 8 months. Jennifer's attorney was skilled and the litigation was difficult in the way these things always are. Not clean, not simple. Full of motions and counter-motions and long stretches of waiting in hallways outside courtrooms. There were days when I questioned whether the patience had been worth it. There were days when I was very tired, but Gordon's audit held. Patricia had built the financial fraud case carefully, and the documentation was thorough enough that Jennifer's options narrowed steadily as the months passed. Derek Holt retained his own attorney and spent considerable energy attempting to characterize the LLC transactions as legitimate business expenses, a position that became increasingly difficult to maintain as Gordon's documentation went deeper. 3 months into the proceedings, Derek's attorney reached out to Patricia to discuss a settlement arrangement in the civil case. Derek was prepared to return a portion of the transferred funds in exchange for the civil complaint being withdrawn. Patricia brought me the offer and gave me her opinion. Take it, she said, because the full civil trial would cost more in legal fees than the disputed remainder, and because the outcome was not guaranteed. I asked her what the alternative was. She said we could proceed to trial and present the full audit and let a jury decide. I thought about it for 2 days. I thought about the long way I had built everything I had built. I thought about what Jennifer had said on the phone that Thursday evening in February. He doesn't know anything. He never has. I told Patricia to proceed to trial. The civil trial lasted 4 days. Gordon testified for most of the second day, walking a jury through the audit in the methodical, patient way that only forensic accountants can sustain. Jennifer took the stand on the 3rd day. Her attorney had prepared her carefully, and she was composed for most of her testimony. But Patricia had a copy of the account opening documents from the credit union in Alpharetta, the joint account in Jennifer's maiden name. And when she placed those documents in front of Jennifer and asked her, specifically, when she had decided to open that account and what its purpose was, something shifted in Jennifer's expression. Not a break exactly, more like a door closing behind a face that had been trying to stay open. The jury found in my favor on all counts. The judgment required the return of $287,000 plus legal fees. Derek Holt's portion was structured as a payment plan. Jennifer's portion was addressed in the divorce settlement through a redistribution of marital assets. The lake house they had been discussing purchasing together, which I had discovered in Jennifer's emails, never materialized. The house in Kennesaw went to me in consideration of Lily's stability and schooling. Jennifer retained her car, her personal accounts, and a modest monthly spousal support arrangement that Patricia had negotiated downward considerably given the circumstances. The day the divorce was finalized, I signed the papers at Patricia's office, shook her hand, and walked out into a Tuesday morning in October. The air had that particular Georgia fall quality, warm enough to be comfortable, cool enough to be honest. I sat in the truck for a minute. Not 20 minutes this time, just 1. Lily was waiting at school. I had told her 3rd period teacher I'd be picking her up early for a dentist appointment. There was no dentist appointment. I drove to her school and signed her out at the front office and took her to get ice cream at a place she liked in East Cobb. And we sat at a picnic table outside and she talked about her best friend's birthday party and a book she was reading, and I listened to every word. She asked me at some point, spoon halfway to her mouth, whether things were going to be okay now. I told her yes. I told her that things were going to be steadier now, and that steady was better than okay. She seemed to consider this seriously, the way 10-year-olds consider things when they decide to take you at your word. Then she went back to her ice cream. I've been asked in the months since by my brother, by a couple of close friends who knew pieces of the story, whether I feel like I won. It's a reasonable question. The legal outcomes were favorable, the finances are recovering, the business is intact. By any measurable standard, the answer should be yes. But here is the thing about betrayal that nobody tells you honestly. Winning the aftermath doesn't undo the thing that happened. The $287,000 came back. The 14 years didn't. The version of my life I had believed I was living, the one with the big backyard and the screened porch and the woman who understood sacrifice, that version is just gone. You don't get that back through a jury verdict. You don't get it back at all. What you get, if you're fortunate and if you're patient, is clarity. You get to know exactly who was standing in that life with you and who was standing across from you the entire time, counting the exits. You get to rebuild from a foundation you have personally inspected, knowing every load-bearing wall. Ray came over for dinner last month. He brought his wife and their youngest, and after the kids had gone to watch a movie in the other room, he and I sat on the screened porch with 2 beers and the sound of the neighborhood settling into evening. He said he was sorry it happened the way it did. I told him I wasn't, exactly. Not anymore. He said that seemed healthy. I said I wasn't sure it was health so much as just time doing what time does. He raised his bottle and I raised mine, and we sat there for a while without saying much else. The screened porch is still there. The backyard is still big. Lily's room is at the top of the stairs, same as always, her drawings taped to the wall outside her door. Every morning I make her breakfast before school. Nothing complicated, eggs and toast, orange juice if we have it. And every morning she sits at the kitchen table and tells me something she is thinking about. Something from school or a dream she had or a question she can't figure out the answer to. Some mornings I think about that Thursday evening in February. The rain on the windshield. The sentence I wasn't supposed to hear. He doesn't know anything. He never has. I pour Lily's orange juice and I call her name up the stairs, and I let the thought go the same way I let most things go now, not by force, but by simply choosing what to do next. That's the whole story. That's all of it.